Welcome back. You're watching NEWSX. I'm Rishabh Gulati. Let's quickly rope in to this telecast. Dr. Jitendra Singh, Union Minister, of course, at the PMO, handles very important departments. Dr. Singh, what a day it has been, what a 24 hours it has been, what a 48 hours it has been, what a year it has been. Now, the fact that we've got a Delhi declaration, we've got a consensus, what does that tell us about Bharat today?
No, I think India has set an example, as Prime Minister Modi had himself said in one of the early remarks when the summit began. He said there's a need to transform global trust deficit into global trust. And that is precisely what has been achieved. I think one of the finest examples of inclusiveness in its best form. Not only in the terms of content, but also in the terms of scale. You have G20 spread over 60 cities, more than 220 meetings, and even in the terms of the outcomes or the lines of efforts, 91 or so, which is higher than most of the other G20 events. But having said that, most of the contentious issues, on the one hand, contentious issues like, for example, the Ukraine, have been dealt with without being evasive, without being manipulative, with the kind of straightforwardness, forthrightness. Like, for example, the declaration admits that its primary mandate is to act as a forum for economic cooperation, but at the same time, and not a platform for resolution of conflict situations or wars. But at the same time, since the aftermath of the war results in economic distress, and therefore it is taking up this issue. I mean, this is a very diligent and a very justifiable way of taking up this issue and then putting it across convincingly. Similarly, the corridor, I think this multi-modal corridor, which is now being popularly described as the Bharat, Middle East, Europe corridor, is something which instantly took me to the Kabuliwala days, because the partition generation and the next generation that followed had always nurtured this quest of having that restoration of the extended connectivity which existed in the pre-partition days. But unfortunately, Pakistan was trying to play its own whims and fancies, sometimes allowing you to use its zone for overflying and gaining access, sometimes not. On the other hand, you had China also, experimenting with different designs to find alternative means of connectivity and road construction, etc. So India has found a way out whereby it would not only connect for reasons of economics, but also connect for the reasons of greater cohesiveness among the world communities. As Prime Minister Modi very beautifully put it in a single sentence, इन्होंने कहा कि connectivity बढ़ने से केवल व्यापार ही नहीं बढ़ता है, बल्कि विश्वास बढ़ने का भी एक source होता है. So I think this, on the one hand, of course, as Europe had declared that they would be investing about more than 300 million euros along this corridor for the infrastructure development, this will facilitate that. On the other hand, in the Arabian Peninsula, when you used to come across sometimes, some situations which were not very compatible with peace, these two would be taken care of. So this is a declaration which has included the resolution process, or not resolution, or possibly humane approach towards the conflict situations, which has also taken upon itself the task of looking at the future, not only of a single country, but at the world as a whole. And I would say it has lived up to its theme, Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. Sense of the
Dr.
phrase.
Singh, I was just discussing this. Prime Minister, of course, has been in Egypt. He's just been to Greece. You can see a thread of this through it. But I2U2, Abraham Accord, this can become the spine that literally binds all of that together. We learn so much from how not to do it, which how the Chinese have taught us. But let me pick up another thread with you, Dr. Singh, because if you go through the entire declaration, there are certain things which are very obvious, which have a very Narendra Modi government-led, prime ministerial-led fingerprint. There's an imprint of it, digital, you talk about education, you talk about governance, you talk about climate change, you talk about, it's very obvious that there's a fingerprint there. I've counted about 17 on then, about the Modi governance mantra, the Modi Shastra. What is this then? as an impactful global leadership model?
See, if you ask me personally, I think even before the G20 summit happened, Prime Minister Modi had already established himself as the tallest leader around, both in terms of his vision and also in the terms of his experience being the longest serving head of state or head of government. And even in G20, most of the heads were not of the equal experience as he is. So that having said that, he has always demonstrated a deep sense of ability to take the issues hands-on and to come to logical conclusions with a certain scientific temper. And also was quick to realize himself and make others realize that the entire growth in the future times is going to be A, technology driven, B, is going to be collective. And that's what he's been able to convince. And thirdly, he has established India's role as a nation which is no longer going to wait only to be led, but is ready to be led. So in a single sentence, I would say, world today is ready to be led by India
So
under Prime Minister Modi.
So through the logistical, there's a photograph, sir, of, all of you as cabinet ministers, and this is in the Mandapam, and Narendra Modi is standing in front, and, he's holding a team meeting, right? Now, so what are the lessons? Because I'm trying to get this into it, because we give him as Prime Minister brickbats, we give him plaudits, but we should also take away some lessons in team management, in leadership, in how to just get something like this organized and convince everybody and come on board. What are the lessons to be learned there?
I think if you take of the personal attributes, it's very difficult to pick up all that he's been blessed with, but he is his concern for detail, his concern for perfection, and his concern for optimum outcomes. Detail, perfection, and optimum outcomes. That is something he's constantly endeavoring, constantly working on, and also inspiring his team to work on.
Okay, so I've got the DPO acronym going. Okay. Now, in the sheer logistics of the exercise, you mentioned, 12,500 delegates entire year. Just this one itself, I mean, this is the record number of heads of government, heads of state in one place at one time. Record for G20, record for India. Nobody, heads of these many have never come, I think, other than that African meeting which we held about 5-6 years ago. So how is this logistical exercise being pulled off?
I think the single most credit again goes to Prime Minister Modi. The manner he inspired, the manner which he structured, the manner in which he mandated each of those who were entrusted with the task of carrying this event across the year. And it's not a small it's not a small happening that I think it's possibly the first time in any of the G20 events that the events were spread over 60 cities, more than 220 meetings, more than 20,500 delegates, more than 40 heads of states, and it virtually covered, because India being a heterogeneous country, it also, Prime Minister Modi also very, very diligently used this opportunity to showcase not only India's soft power as in diplomacy and technology, but also India's diverseness and beauty as far as its cultural attributes are concerned. North is different from South, East different from West, Northeast different from all, and virtually to each corner of the country, the delegates had the opportunity to visit. And some of the destinations, like for example, Srinagar in Jammu and Kashmir, where a lot of anticipation had been associated. How would it happen, whether it would happen, how many would be attending, I think turned out to be one of the most popular among all the 220 meetings. We had such a huge rush of delegates, and besides the official program, the side events were also very popularly carried forward.
Okay.
And in the bargain, it has enhanced the tourism of the Kashmir Valley multifold.
Okay, I just want to touch upon just one other tack on this, because we've been discussing here now for several days. And I know you follow NEWSX, so we talk about the history and culture of India often. So we've been discussing this concept of a Punarjagaran, a Bharatiya Punarjagaran, the Indian Renaissance, where we don't find it to be uncomfortable in our skin to celebrate our ethos and our civilizational heritage. But do we have a larger understanding of this going across the world? Vasudeva Kundambakam, Vishwamitra. Do we have a rubric with which to place our conversations to the world?
Absolutely. Yes, to put your, to rephrase your question or paraphrase your question and answer it, I appreciate what you said. I would rather say that now India is in a position where it's laying the benchmarks in more ways than one. I think one of the best examples is our Chandrayaan. The entire world is taken aback how we could have a successful moon landing mission with a small amount of 600 crore, which is hardly considered anything for a space mission. Because the comparison comes very sharply when, simultaneously another lunar mission happened by Russia, which was 16,000 crore, which didn't prove to be that successful as Chandrayaan. So India, by way of its cerebral attributes, by way of its human resource, has been able to show the world how you can actually go beyond the material or physical resources to achieve on the strength of what is truly Indian ethos. This is something which we have inherited as a legacy, which makes us more effective even we are devoid or we are lacking in the human resources. Similarly, technology, not only for showing technological supremacy to the rest of the world, but for using it for the ease of living, for the ease of citizen. Space technology not only for sending up rockets into the space, but also for building smart cities, for building rail tracks, for metro trains, for roads buildings, for digital health, for Swamitva program, which is one of the examples. So I think India is now established itself as a country, as a nation under Prime Minister Modi, which will, in the times to come, lay the parameters for the others to follow.
Okay, all right. Let me just.
In this global competition.
So just, but on the thread, sir, you know this. When we talk about the Renaissance in Europe, what was the period? The Dark Ages, of, and then a classical revivalism, self-discovery that leads to the Da Vinci's and the Michelangelos of the world. Then that also leads, Da Vinci began as an artist, but then he started doing mechanical engineering and construction. Then you get the Newtons and the Industrial Revolution. So modern technology was not only imbibed by, not only not opposed by, but a fruition of a classical revivalism, a Punarjagaran is how you would say Renaissance. Are we witnessing that Punarjagaran?
I think as far as Bharat is concerned, this is the beginning of the Amrit Kal. and Bharat is already taken over. The Amrit Kal will be the time period when there will be reiteration, not once but again and again, of India having arrived in a very big way. And just imagine, at the time of independence, we were just 3% GDP, our lifespans were below 40, our poverty line population was almost 90%. And now, within a few years, under Prime Minister Modi, nearly 16 crore population has come out of the poverty line. So, on the one hand, India has started progressively, rising as far as growth is concerned. At the same time, the pace of growth has also increased. And we are now at par with the world, or sometimes even ahead of that. It's not that the television arrived in the United States in 1950, it arrives in India in 1970. It's not that computers happened there 10 years earlier than us. If the rest of the world is into R&D of quantum technology, so are we.
Yeah.
We are only 3-4 countries. Even many of the European countries, many of the G20 countries are not into quantum technology. But we are. The US is there. Some other countries. So we are now actually in a position to lead the world.
Okay, all right. Let me just take that as a last thought from you before we wind this up. I know time is short. We've had the bilateral with the US president now twice in 3 months. So on naval maintenance, you mentioned technology 6G. Okay, in that relationship, Is that going to be the driving factor for the globe?
Absolutely, I totally agree with you. And just as one of the leading periodicals published an interview by me and used one of the phrases by me as its heading, India no longer a lesser cousin. And I think truly so. Today, United States looks at Bharat as a nation with which it has to not only do business, but has possibly very few options not to do business. India has become a natural partner or business collaborator for any other nation of the world. And if you just recall, you mentioned 2 or 3 bilaterals happening in a short span of time between President Biden and Pradhan Mantri Modi.
Yes.
You would recall that when Prime Minister Modi visited Washington DC recently, most of the agreements were not, on the one hand, technology driven, but at the same time they were also soliciting collaboration from Bharat. Like, for example, the Artemis agreement was already in place. United States was soliciting Bharat's inclusion in that. Similarly, it was United States which expected Bharat to become a part of the semiconductor consortium that they had already put in place. Thirdly, the International Space Station. It was during Prime Minister Modi's DC visit, Washington DC visit, that one of the agreements solicited Indian astronauts to accompany to the International Space Station, and that was possibly reiterated during the G20 bilaterals as well. So it's no longer a one-way traffic. On the other hand, it's United States and also any other so-called developed country of the world looking up to India to engage with it.
Yeah, so
to engage with Bharat.
The meeting has to be of equal, sir. I mean, it doesn't work otherwise. It's not going to be a healthy relationship otherwise, or increasingly so. Dr. Jitendra Singh, as always, thanks very much. I know it's been a busy day. Appreciate your time in sharing those thoughts and perspectives with us. So let me pick up a themology, if I can, with our guests. Joining us on the broadcast, Madhav Nalapat, the editorial director of the ITV network. Hindol Singh Gupta is with us. Shashwat Kumar is joining us. He's a fellow at the US India Policy Studies. Syed Salman Chishti, chairman of Chishti Foundation, joining us. Dr. Rao is with us from Bengaluru, and Ambassador Manju Seth with us as well. So, Professor Nalapat, let me just jump on this themology here, okay? And we're going to show some image of our screens, okay? So, this is Narendra Modi